right, hey guys, just wanted to welcome you to the second episode of the Angry Advocate podcast. My name is Ed. I'm the guitar player of Death's Hand and the Advocate Media guy.
And hi guys, I'm Ash. I own Angry Ginger Photographer, and I'm the other co-host on this lovely podcast. I'm so excited about this second episode because we are introducing our first guest. He is a friend of mine. He is the guitarist of Groaning Retch and Infinite Misery. We have Rob on the show.
What's going on, guys?
What's up, man?
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's really good to have you on. Super excited. A band that I don't really know and someone I don't really know, so that's super interesting. I'm always really happy to meet new people and learn about new bands and stuff like that.
It's all good. We haven't made it up quite as far north as you for the most part, so that's completely understandable.
Yeah, but it's awesome. It's a really fun thing to kind of meet new people, and Ashley and I are new friends, and so it's cool to kind of see and hear some people that she knows that I don't, and then I mean it's vice versa, So she was kind of the one to orchestrate the first couple people coming on, and your name came up first, and was pretty exciting. So yeah, I'm pumped.
Very good. Very happy to be here.
Absolutely. And I've gotten, I remember when Rob got into Groaning Retch, I helped with a music video for them, which is wild to think because that music video is only going to have Mike remaining member of Groaning for that. But it's wild to see how far Groaning and Rob and everything else has come. So it's awesome to bring it full circle here on the podcast.
Yeah, and also pulling in Hudson Valley as well, which is even further south from me.
Absolutely. Rob and I are both originally from same area of New York, and I'm actually right now in a hotel in New Haven, Connecticut for work.
Oh,
so I'm
weird.
actually closer to Rob than I am up to Ed right now. So
That's funny.
Still all New England, but it's funny.
That's cool.
Nice. What are you doing in New Haven?
My day job is I'm a school I do school photo day. So they have me at a school. Yeah.
Nice.
So they have me at schools down here the next 2 days. So I do that, and I'm a sports photographer outside of all of the concert photography.
Well, keeping busy, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, we had a bunch of questions. We wanted to start kind of break the ice and kind of learn more about you and your influences and your just a bunch of stuff about you and how music has affected you.
Of course.
So yeah.
Awesome. First, we'd like to show everyone just a little bit of Rob and his playing. So Ed, if you want to pop that video up.
Yeah, so this is let's see. The one I was looking at is what's it? Torture Rack? Is that?
Yeah.
Nice. That was awesome. That was really cool. Yeah.
Nothing released yet, but hopefully in the next month or so.
Incredible.
Nice. Yeah, nice. That's really cool. And how many people in the band?
So Infinite Misery is right now just me, and then actually vocals are not completely solidified yet. Like I've written everything, but that's kind of what a little bit the holdup is, and also I've had a little bit of holdups in terms of mixing and stuff like that, which is part of the reason that it's taking so long. But Nick Belmore, who I'm not sure if you know, but he's like the drummer for Better Lovers, and he's like done a whole bunch of stuff with Hatebreed and Josta and a whole bunch of stuff. So he has a studio over here in Milford, but he's on tour with Better Lovers right now. So
Yeah.
I gotta wait till he gets back to have him do it. But he did the latest Corpse Grinder album from Cannibal Corpse, and like Infinite Misery. I don't know how much you know Cannibal Corpse, but like I'm a huge Cannibal Corpse freak, and like basically the entire project is just like it's a lot of people probably will think it's really lame, but I've actually had a lot of really good feedback on it so far. It's basically like a Cannibal Corpse ripoff, like even like the name is done like in the same font and whatever, and I like ripped the font basically. And it was basically just like nobody else there. I mean, think about it, for like every genre that there is, that like there's huge iconic bands, like everyone's ripped them off a million times. But like basically the 2000s like era of Cannibal Corpse, which I like grew up with and like particularly love, like nobody does. Like it's not in hardly anything. And so I was like, well, I really need to get my chops back up, and it's like way outside of my comfort level playing wise and writing wise. And so like that's basically what it's going to end up being. And like lyrics and like vocal flows are all like basically supposed to be almost a mirror image, to the point where like if the guys from Cannibal Corpse dropped it like that, nobody would be able to tell the difference.
Right. That's cool.
That's like kind of the purpose of doing it. So we'll see what the reception's like after it drops, but it's been like pretty cool so far from just like the handful of clips that I've dropped. So hopefully people end up liking it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just watching that playthrough, you know, from a guitar standpoint, I mean, you saying it was kind of like, you know, more difficult for you. I mean, your hand movements looked very fluid. You know what I mean? Like everything looked very fluid when you were playing. So, I mean, I don't know if that's just from, you know, recording the tracks and playing them enough that you're at a point where, you know, you're more comfortable, or you know what I mean?
We're getting there. We're getting there. I mean, thankfully for me, well, I don't know if I should say thankfully, but like I'm not planning on taking it live because I'm sure we'll get into it like later on, but I don't really want to do a live thing very much anymore, which is part of the reason that I'm not going to be doing Groaning Retch anymore, because Saturday is my last show with them. But yeah, I kind of like just want to focus on like actually getting the time to play and write and do the things that I love. Because I mean, like I've always loved live music and I still do, but for me, my love of like playing and writing and everything has only been from the standpoint of I really enjoy playing and writing, and not really from like a live performance perspective. So Groaning Retch was cool because I could like get back into doing it again, because I hadn't played live like since I moved into Connecticut, because I was like living in New York for pretty much my whole life, or various areas of it. But like I just don't really want to be gigging anymore. I don't love it a ton. And so like I just want to spend the time to write. So
Yeah, that's interesting. That's crazy.
yeah.
But that kind of like segments perfectly into my first question, which is how long have you been playing music? And the second part was what made you want to be in a band? But I guess now it's not so that you still want to do band parts, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I like really started taking music seriously when I was like 15 or 16. So it's been a while. It's been like 15 or 16 years that I've been playing, which I wish I was better for how long I've been playing. But I guess like it's kind of always fallen by the wayside because I've had like a pretty intensive career, and through college I basically worked almost full time and like everything. So guitar has always unfortunately fallen by the wayside, which is part of the reason I just don't want to do live, because I want to be able to like spend more time actually like learning songs and practicing instead of like just kind of half-assing it as I go along. And whatnot. But yeah, so I've been playing for that long. I've played in more projects than I would ever care to admit at this point. So yeah, but I don't think I like really had my first serious band that I played in until I was like 20 or 21. So probably like 10 years ago. And then I've done like quite a lot of stuff since then because I get really bad like musical ADD, I guess you could say, where I go through like 6-month periods of genres that I love to write in. Like I know Ashley and I have talked about it before, and stuff like with Zach, that like the midnight is like was like really huge for you guys and whatnot. And like I love the midnight, and I like love synth pop. Yeah, which is so sick. And so like I love synth pop, and like I went through probably almost a year period where like all I wrote was synth pop and whatnot. So I'm like a little all over the place, but it's like really cool because I never really get writer's block because like I always have a refresh of like things that I'm working on and whatnot. So a hack for anyone who gets writer's block, write in a different genre for a little bit of time, and you'll come back with more ideas than you could possibly imagine and different approaches that can be applied that you never thought would be applicable to whatever it is that you're writing. So
when you change the mindset, yeah,
a little bit of a hack there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective on that, because like for me, so like in Death's Hand, I don't do a lot of the writing. Most of the writing is done by Kyle. I do write.
Yeah.
But I get writer's block all the time. Like
learn other people's music. Like just like incessantly learn other people's music, and like kind of like take, I don't know, it's lame because it like sounds like telling somebody to like take a college class or something like that. But study, like I know that on the first episode of this, you were kind of going through like the bands that you really liked right now, and whatnot. But like even if you took like an Alpha Wolf song or whatever, or not an Alpha Wolf song, but like if you go through their discography, even like album by album, and see the things that they're doing differently and whatnot, and you kind of like really sit down with those and like, oh, well, like what drum fills do they put in this EP or this album that feel different than the last one, and like what impacts does it have on in terms of like the writing and stuff like that. And then you move on to like the next band and the next band and stuff like that. Like you end up with so many tools in your belt that like you will just never lose inspiration, because you can pull little bits of and pieces from things. And I don't mean that in terms of like what I'm doing for Infinite Misery, because I like that is like trying to like emulate as opposed to like drawing influence per se. But yeah, you'll never have writer's block after that. Like just take time, learn other people's stuff. And if the genre itself is kind of like burning you out a little bit, like learn other things and then come back to it, and you'll be very surprised by the results, because you'll probably first of all be doing something that like other bands aren't doing and like aren't putting in, because they're like stuck in like dealing with that genre all the time or whatever, and like trying to do whatever. But like you'll be reinventing things that like you wouldn't think are applicable or whatever. So I don't know, just
that's crazy.
What I do pretty regularly.
Yeah, and we do something similar with that. Like we really try to not be every deathcore band ever. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're like, we specifically try to go like, okay, all those super slow, like crazy heavy breakdowns, like we don't want to do those. You know what I mean? Like we just don't. You know, and it's like the way you explain your writing is interesting. This is why I am
it's
excited.
The opposite, and I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
From like what you said last episode to like now, I love seeing both sides of this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so cool to just talk to people about stuff, because like I don't get to have these conversations with band members. You know what I mean? Like when you're at a show, like you're not sitting around nerding talking about how you write. Like you don't like, you just don't. I mean, to a point you do. There's some things you talk about when someone's like, oh, that part in that song was really cool, and then like you talk about it a little bit, but that's it. Like it's not like you go super in depth and say like, you know, this, that, or whatever. Because one thing I can tell you, I do not learn other band songs. I don't. And here's the thing, I hate it. And the reason why I hate it is because I feel like as soon as I start to attach myself to certain bands and learn certain songs, I'm like, I'm going to sound exactly like them.
Well, then do that for things that aren't relevant to like the genre that you're working in, and then see after 6 months how that bleeds into like what you're doing. Because like, even like, just as an example, I think for me, like I was always pretty happy with the music that I wrote, like even up to a handful of years ago. But they're like, I got big into this band called Drab Majesty for a while, and they kind of really completely shifted my approach to writing. And I think it was because like that was the synth pop period of time that I was talking about. So like up until that point, like for metal, like I wrote based upon riffs and whatnot. And then now I find, even though I'm like back into death metal again, which is like what I was kind of into mostly as a kid, like I find myself being like, okay, well, like where's the hook? And it's so weird to say. And like also part of the reason that, like, not to keep coming back to it, but part of the reason that I am like drawn to Cannibal Corpse stuff is like they're one of the only death metal bands that like has choruses basically, or like hooks in the stuff. And so like I always loved them growing up, but like it wasn't until the past few years like rediscovering it and saying, oh, like why is nobody else doing this formula of like basically taking pop songs with death metal riffs? And like I know that that sounds like a wild like combination of things to say, but it is kind of true. Like they are the only band in the genre, and it's probably the reason that they're so commercially successful, other than the fact that they're like first wave of death metal period.
Right.
But like, I mean, who's more iconic than them? And like there's a reason that they're iconic. Like they are writing pop songs as death metal songs, and nobody else is doing that, and still nobody else is doing that. So like it's really weird that that's the case for like, I don't know. But anyway, I guess what I was saying is like you come back with that appreciation of like, oh, well, like maybe I could do this like this. Nobody else is doing this in the genre. And it's not even like, oh, I'm attaching myself or consciously have to detach myself, like because your frame of mind is already changed up, like you don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah. And that's I think that's a really key point to distinguish, you know what I mean? Like it's like you don't have to attach yourself to the same genre that you're in and go, oh well, I'm going to take all of this in because it's what I'm playing. And you like you said, like you can change a genre and go, hey, go listen to this, or you know, try to learn, you know, guitar in this, or try to learn this. And yeah, I guess I didn't really look at it that way from that perspective, is like learning, like even if you just went and learned like, I don't know, like any, just pick a genre, you know what I mean? Like I'm sure you could go start listening to ska, all right, and like get some chord progressions or just like chord parts that you're like, oh, okay, cool, like, or some weird like augmented chords, like some weird something, and you're like, oh wow, like that sounds really cool, and then you can just, you know, morph that into something you're doing. You know what I mean? Obviously not, you know, like ska metal, but you know what I mean?
No,
like it's just you can it's chords and sounds. You can find different chords and sounds, or just ideas, or like, hey, like there's this chorus part that sounds really cool. I wonder if I could write something similar to that in a more metal context. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I mean, like in certain cases, like it'll be like that and fundamentals will transfer across, but then there will be like certain techniques that also transfer across. Like if you think about the best drummers arguably in like all of metal period, like most of them were either number one, like gospel drummers, which is crazy because they have like the most insane pockets to be able to play in those church bands. Or they're like basically like they were huge into jazz and they just have like the most insane chops. And then you have all these people blasting away relentlessly, which, like, don't get me wrong, I listen to my fair share of blast happy stuff.
For sure.
But like when the drummers that differentiate themselves are like putting in stuff from like jazz fusion bands and like fills like that like nobody else is really doing. And then they're breaking the mold without even thinking about breaking the mold and stuff. So I don't know. It's just like, I think that that's the best way to like cure the kind of genre fatigue and then also like writing fatigue as well.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, and second question kind of has already been answered in one respect. Obviously, Cannibal Corpse is probably one of your biggest influences, but like outside of that genre, who else like has really influenced you? Like, and I mean, it could be anything because I think in the last podcast, like I used to listen to jazz and Motown. That's what I grew up with. You know what I mean? So like, what kind of first started influencing you in music and then like progressed to where you were a huge Cannibal Corpse fan?
Yeah, so I think I've kind of always like done this. I consider it like a living in two separate worlds and like having like very bifurcated tastes. And like there's all those people that'll be like, oh yeah, I listen to everything, which like, yeah, I mean, you kind of should to a certain extent. But like for me, it's kind of always fallen in like two categories. I either like super light or like as heavy as it gets and not really a whole lot in the middle. And not that there's not like outliers on that and whatnot. But like I would say growing up, like I would be listening to like bands like Suffocation and Cannibal Corpse and like all those like death metal bands. And then on the like in my car, the CDs, you would like go and be like, oh, this is like this Suffocation record. And then the next record would be like Bon Iver and stuff like that. So like I would say for me though, like in recent years, like yeah, Drab Majesty was like a huge one, which I know that I mentioned before. But like growing up, yeah, I definitely listened to a lot of like ambient stuff, like a lot of really like ambient stuff. Like Explosions in the Sky was like one of my first like obsession bands, and like still do a lot of ambient stuff to this day, even though like I don't really post it up very much anymore. Yeah, and then like Bon Iver was huge for me. I'm like just trying to dig back through like those periods of time. Yeah, because I've gone through like so many phases that are ridiculous. And then I would say like, I guess it's not that long ago considering my age, but I would say like 10 years ago, I got like big into Foxing with like one of their records. And like that also kind of took everything that I thought that I knew about music and writing and like also turned it completely on its head. So, I mean, I'm sure there's like a million more. Like Job for a Cowboy was also absolutely massive for me growing up and like part of the reason that I started playing guitar, period. But yeah, I don't know. It's like so scattered and all over the place for me to like pick things. I would like probably need to go in my Spotify like history and see what I've listened to the most, because it's just it's so all over the place, and I also don't think well on the spot, so I'm probably skipping the top 5 that if we weren't doing this right now I'd be able to list off in a heartbeat. So yeah, hopefully that answers at least part of that though.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna dig your brain even deeper. What is the most memorable show you've ever been a part of?
Actually, weirdly enough, that one I can actually think of off the top of my head. Actually, can I answer it in like 2 parts? Because I think there's 2 shows. So I'll keep them both quick. But one of them, I played a house show on New Year's, probably the year right before I met my wife. So that was probably going into 2014. And it was like kind of insane because it was like one of those shows that you really only see in like movies that would be in like American Pie or something like that. It was like at my friend from high school's house. I like played bass for his band for like a handful of shows during that period of time when they didn't have one. So we played at his parents' house, and there was like 300 kids, like all wasted, like like half set was like originals, half was like cover songs like Beastie Boys and like the Stooges and stuff like that. So like everyone was going nuts. There was like people like basically hanging from the chandelier in like the dining room, like things like that that you only see in movies. So like that was pretty wild, and that was just like a really fun night. And then I guess more recently, Wretched Inferno headlined a show at the Middle East that we played, and it was like probably 130 or 140 people in the upstairs. I think it sold out, and like Groaning Retch kind of has this, well, maybe it's just a notorious reputation in my head, but of like either playing insanely good sets or insanely bad sets with like no rhyme or reason. No rhyme or reason as to why they turn out the way that they do. But we were just like so on that night, and like everything went pretty perfectly, and it was like a perfect set. The like perfect set for us. The crowd interaction was wild. It just like it was the all of the energy and all the response that you could possibly want, and everything sounded the way that it was supposed to, like to a T, which when those worlds collide, like you can't really ask for much more. So I think that was probably the most memorable recent one, though.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've found that the craziest shows for me have been kind of exactly what you're saying. Like I've never had like, I mean, I'm sure hopefully in the future that Death's Handle will get the opportunity to play a big show at like a big venue. But like most of the most memorable shows I've ever had have been at like house parties. Have just been like in college. I played a show and I just remember like I played drums for the band that I was in at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like the whole set going absolutely perfectly. Everybody just giving back so much energy, and
Yes.
like as much as we put forth times, two, you know what I mean? And I clearly remember getting out from behind my kit, going up to the front of the microphone and like thanking everybody for like giving me the best set, like like you know what I mean? And like I think I cried. Like I'm pretty sure I freaking cried. Like and those are super fun shows, just like really organic DIY shows. Those, I mean, and I'm sure selling out a huge stadium or whatever is fun too, but those smaller shows where there's like 100,
But I mean,
150, 300 people,
It probably also depends on the energy, though, too, because like you could sell. Well, I don't know. Like I shouldn't say sell out, but like you could play to like thousands of people, and the energy could be super super whack. Because I just went down to see Power Trip, like in I guess it's Queens at the Knockdown Center. It's either Queens or Brooklyn. Not that it matters. And like the venue, I don't know, there was probably like 3,000 people there, and Frozen Soul played, and like their set sounded like pretty good, I would say. And like, I don't know, there was no energy at all. And I felt so bad because it was like one of the poorest responses I've seen to like a pretty good set. And like, to be fair, like I'm not huge into them, which is probably weird because that like is one of Groaning Retch's like original members like favorite bands, and like I think Groaning Retch was kind of like modeled after them inadvertently. But like I don't know, I think that they played like a really good set and like to a few thousand people, and it just you could feel the air in the room just like being completely dead. And not that there like wasn't noise and people weren't moving, but like there's something palpable about the, or sorry, I guess not palpable, but like the energy almost feels like it is, where like if it doesn't matter how many people you have, like if it's dead, it's dead. Like, and you could have 20 people there and they could all be going crazy. And it's like, okay, yeah, I played to 20 people. Well, like everyone was having the time of their life. And like, you can immediately tell, like, I would say like 5 minutes, like in the first 5 minutes of the set, like whether or not it's going to be like a great set or it's going to be like a really mediocre, crappy one just by like crowd response. And doesn't matter how many people are there. So I don't know. It's sometimes unfortunate, but a little bit of a gamble that you take in doing shows. I'm sure if you talk to any big band that is selling out, like that Peeling Flesh tour or whatever that sold out like 30 consecutive dates. Like, I'm sure actually with how they are as a band, like it was probably popping off the entire time. But like, I'm sure if you ask them for previous shows and stuff, even ones that they've sold out, that like there's a distinguishable difference between, I don't know, Albuquerque and San Francisco or whatever in terms of like what the energy level is, even if they sold out 1,500 seats for, or 1,500 cap for both. Like I'm sure there's a distinguishable difference for like everyone.
Last night, I was at House of Blues for shooting Creator and Testament, and the vocalist of Creator was like literally just standing there like, let me hear you, and it was silent.
Dead? Yeah, that's why.
Like trying, and it's like, just let it be.
Honestly, I feel like you need to bow out with stuff like that, where it's like, if you know, I mean, I guess if you've been doing it for that long, some of those bands, they probably understand to a certain extent, like maybe that they can pull some of it back, even if it's not quite there. But I think sometimes you kind of gotta just like cut your losses. Like if it's not there, it's not there. And by doing that, like you're almost making it worse.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It's a little bit of a gamble altogether, I would say.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I hope eventually he did stop.
Yeah.
It's kind of
He did.
sad.
It just kind of progressed. They did a big wall of death. It was, yeah.
Cool. I mean, it happens. It happens.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a question that I definitely wanted to answer, because I'm a massive gearhead when it comes to guitars and just stuff. So gear wise, what are you using for both bands? Guitar wise, pedal board wise, are you using a modeler? Are you using tube? Like, like where are you at this point?
Yeah, so I've never switched to modeler. I don't it's not like a going kicking and screaming into it type of thing, and I'm not like super old school. I just think that I don't care enough to spend the time to like really learn things properly. And also, I guess to be fair, like I think a lot of people have moved to modeler for sake of ease to a certain extent, because like if you do need a lot of different patches and stuff like that, then it's worthwhile instead of like dragging around a huge pedal board or like sacrificing tone. And then also, this is probably a lot more relevant for the genre that you're in than me, but like a lot of people are like automating sets now, where like things change automatically and it just makes sense to do that. But I've been rocking tube stuff for quite a bit of time. The band that I was in last when I was in New York was like, I guess this like blackened hardcore band. And like, there's no way I could have used modeler for it, no matter like what my power amp was, because it just wouldn't have had the balls to cut through the mix properly. Like, let's put it this way. I was rocking an Angle Fireball at one point in time for it, and I was getting lost in the mix because it was so clean. And I think modelers would have had like almost exactly the same thing. So I ended up having to switch to like, I mean, I already had the head that I ended up using again with it anyway, but it is kind of weird how that works. But I've pretty much used tube. Right now I have like a 6505 plus and an Angle Powerball 2. But I pretty much for Groaning Retch only use the PV to the extent that I can, because it gives a little bit grimier of a feel, which I like a lot better with them, because it is a grimy band. I've used the Angle a few times out of necessity, because I have one of my friends' bands has been using my PV for like the past handful of months and whatnot. But I'm very much looking forward to having it back on Saturday for this show that we're playing. So I'm pretty much using the PV right now. But like I'm probably the worst person to ask about this, because like I go through gear phases kind of similarly to the way I go through genre phases. And sometimes it's because of that. But I also think going back to, and I probably sound like an absolute psycho for how I'm putting these things out there. But like, I think for me also part of the reason that I don't really get writer's block very much is because I switch gear a lot. and that also like forces me creatively to like adapt to either things that I haven't used before, or like, I don't know, probably also to sound just as lame, like kind of each instrument has its own voice or sometimes lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
And like you jive like really hard with stuff. So like, I don't know, sometimes I'll go through like almost a dozen guitars in a year that I like swap
Yep.
and trade out. I've tried to like limit it because it is kind of insane. But yeah, I go through a lot of gear stuff. So I would say like right now I'm like mostly playing BC Riches for the most part, but I had like a period of time where I was like only playing Jackson Randy Rhodes, and like that's kind of what I've been using in Groaning Retch for the past 2 years and whatnot. But like now I'm back on weird BC Rich shapes for the most
That's
part,
funny.
and big into EMGs again, even though I like swore that I would never had Floyd Rose and never have EMGs ever again after probably like 2016, and here I am like basically converting everything that I have or swapping out guitars for pretty much exclusively that combo again. So
Yeah.
I'm probably the worst person to talk to, but that's been what I've been jiving with a lot recently, and it's kind of going hand in hand with me moving towards the stuff that I'm doing now, because like obviously like a lot of the 90s death metal bands were like all pretty much BC Rich for the most part, and it just has kind of happened that I've been getting back into that as I've been kind of rediscovering my love for that period of time again. So yeah, it just kind of goes hand in hand with whatever I'm working on at the period of time. I had probably 3 or 4 years where all I played was jazz masters. So I'm a little all over the place all of the time. So
Yeah. That's gear is a huge thing for me. I'm the exact same way. Like I have a couple of guitars that are like my mainstays.
yeah.
I've got I have a 7-string Aristides that I use. It's my custom one. It's got our Death's Hand logo on the 12th fret. That's my
Sweet.
baby. Like
Yeah.
gonna be buried with me when I'm dead. Like there's
Yeah,
no
well,
doubt about it.
also when you drop that kind of money, I will hope that it gets the play that it deserves. So
Yeah. It's like
fair
that.
enough.
Yeah, that guitar hands down is the best guitar I've ever played in my life. Like it is the most comfortable guitar. Like that's like home base for me,
Yeah.
but I love Jacksons, Jacksons are huge. I just picked up the guitar player for Ginger just came out with a Jackson
Oh,
model
I
for
know which
for
one.
himself.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
green one. I have that one. It's so that's
Okay.
a 6-string. It's a 6-string baritone. So I'm playing normally I play 7 strings. So that is a 6-string baritone
Is it
that's
26
just
and a
dropped.
half?
It's 27.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 27. So but yeah, the thing that I found very interesting that you said is like different guitars have different voices, and they absolutely do. And I don't mean tone.
Yeah.
Like
That's
yeah,
what I meant. And I realized as you said that, I was like, oh, I probably should have specified. I don't even mean tonally. I just mean like
yeah.
what it gears you towards to a
A
certain
thousand
extent.
percent.
So,
1,000%. And it's funny because there's a lot of people that I don't think that way, but there are definitely a lot of people that do.
yeah.
I mean, you could like I could pick up like I've got an Ormsby 7-string over here. I've got a Balaguer 7-string. I've got another Jackson. I have an LTD. Like if you asked me to pick up a guitar and play one of them, I'd play a certain genre of music on one.
Mm.
Like or not necessarily genre, but like riff wise. Like
Yeah.
it would all be some sort of like within the metal realm, but like, there's some stuff that would be like, more metalcore because it's specifically like that's what this guitar pulls that out of me, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So it's cool to hear the same thing where you're just like,
Very
oh yeah, like
weird. It's
yeah,
very
it
weird
is.
how it works, but
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people I feel like it kind of goes one or two ways. Like you either get it or you don't. Like you don't get a lot of people, and I don't mean that in terms of like the way that I put that, I guess probably sounds like elitist, and I don't mean it that way. I mean like it either clicks with you, that ideology, or it doesn't. Same thing as like when
Yeah.
people talk about like, oh, do you have like internal dialogue? Like, is there a voice or is there not a voice? Like, I think it's kind of like almost one of those things where like it either clicks with you or it doesn't, where some people are just happy to have the instrument and they can just do whatever on whatever. But like, I think with a lot of people, like there's a noticeable difference between what comes out depending on what it is that you're playing and like also what you're focusing on at the time. So
yeah, it definitely makes a difference for me. So it's cool. Not that I haven't met a lot of people that feel the same way, but I haven't had conversations with people, you know what I mean, about that exact same thing. So it's interesting to kind of see that that's also a thing that many other people
it's
have.
definitely a thing. That's for sure.
Guitars talk to me. Like I'm scrolling through Instagram and I go, oh wait, what's that? Oh, okay, that one. Like that's talking to me right now. I don't know what it is, but it's something. That's really funny.
All right. So Rob, who are some of your favorite local bands right now?
Meaning specifically for like the Northeast area, or just like people who haven't
just in
like
general,
quite
like
made
if
it that
it
big.
goes out of it.
I mean, at least for the Northeast, like death metal wise, like I think that probably the two best that there are right now, at least for like people that have potential, are probably like the Wretched Inferno crew, which also includes Metriphagy. They're just like those. I say kids because I'm like old in comparison to them, but like those kids absolutely rip, and like they're just clued into what they need to be doing and what they should be doing. And like, I definitely see them heavy on the come up. And then also like Roots of Deception as well, which I feel like I'm also kind of biased on these things because like they are my friends, but they Slam and Hubie are definitely locked in with each other in a way, also at a caliber of like playing that like pretty much no one else is, at least near us. So I think that they also have like a lot of potential. But then also like Servant of Sorrow are like big friends of mine from the Hudson Valley, and Grave Heist also big friends of mine from the Hudson Valley, and I really love what they're doing. But I mean, like pretty much anyone in like the New England death metal scene and then like Hudson Valley hardcore scene, like those are my like staple areas. So there's like too many to even really mention on that front. But I guess in terms of like what I would probably not consider local, but like on the come up, like basically since they started, Tribal Gaze has been like one of my favorite bands. And like they're finally getting their flowers probably over like the past like 6 to 12 months. But if you want to talk about like ass beater riff after ass beater riff, like even in the death metal genre, it's pretty wild. There's not many bands I can say that I was like there on the come up for them where I was like, oh, I was into them before like anyone else was. But I think that I was like pretty much on the ground floor for them. They had like less than 1,000 plays on like their Spotify songs when I had come across them, like right after they had put their album out. And now like they're starting to really be on the uptick, and like they're on some like pretty substantial tours now and stuff like that. So I would say like at least for death metal stuff, they're really huge. But yeah, I would say probably those handful, and probably last one, Scasm, is like a New Jersey like grind band. They're also like really young, like basically Wretched Inferno age. So like basically just out of high school, maybe like a year or so out, and like absolute monsters. Like we got a chance to play with them in New Jersey. And I remember like they came up to us, and like, first of all, it was probably the worst set that we played on. Sorry, was by far the worst set that we played on tour. And they like came up to us and they were like, oh, we've been bumping you guys for like the past like year, like whatever, like we love like the EP and like all this stuff. And I was like, you guys know that you absolutely annihilated our set and you're like half our age. So, well, I guess not half, but like substantially younger, and like they haven't been playing for that long. And like they're like one of those bands that like you hear about years later that people talk about them and they're like, those kids are just freaks. Like they were freaks immediately from the beginning. Like their synergy amongst them is pretty much unmatched. It's like things that people could practice years and years for, and like just never, like you just never really get there. Like those kids have a very I want to say a very bright future in ahead of them, and I mean that in all sincerity. The only thing that's like kind of unfortunate is when you are playing a genre like that, like you can only really like get so big because it's like not a very popular genre. But I think like as far as that goes, like, because I mean the biggest band in like that general realm is like Full of Hell, and like yeah, Full of Hell is on a lot of stuff, but like who is then like the next band under Full of Hell for like that genre? Like name it.
Right.
Like you probably can't, unless you're into it, obviously. But
Right.
like but like they're playing kind of that style. Their drummer is like a freak of nature and like one of the best drummers I've seen in recent years, and he's like probably 19, maybe 20, and like it's just some of those things like you can't practice your way into, and he probably does practice a ton, but like you can just tell where like the raw talent is, and like them, Wretch and Inferno, Roots of Deception, like those kids play at a different level, and once again I don't mean to downplay their practicing. I don't know what their like regimens are and how much time they take, but I think the difference between them and other people is like you can tell immediately that they're already operating on a different level, regardless of how much they practice.
Yeah.
And I could practice for 8 hours a day for the next 3 years and never be playing at like that level of guitar. So it's just some people are built for it and have the eye for it and whatever, and some people don't. I like to think that even despite being what I would consider a pretty mediocre guitar player, I think I'm like a pretty good writer, just from like doing it for a lot of years, which I think some other people in like that genre and area, I think that I'm probably a little better at. But then from like a perspective of like playing like blown out of the water on like all fronts, there's just like there's too many amazing people. So
it is, and I love hearing you talk about Wretch Inferno because my standout show, like of local level, was their very first show at
which I'm sure was awesome, and they were probably also like 14.
Like in absolute insanity, and it's just like there's been a few experiences because then they were playing Ralph's with Frog Mallet, and Ralph's almost didn't let them in because of the age and everything.
And it's like weird too, because like I, to a certain extent, feel like a little bizarre even like hanging with them. And like obviously like there's no shade at them. They're all like great dudes. And so I hope if any of them listen to this that they don't like take this the wrong way. But like it does feel like a little weird to a certain extent, because like I'm 32 and like Angelo, their guitar player, graduated high school like in June. And so like for me, it's a little weird because like if you take it out of context of like playing shows with them, you're like, you're a 32-year-old hanging out with a 17-year-old, but like also not to be discredited and like not to like justify what I just said, but like they also like their maturity level and like their ability to play is like a decade ahead of what their age is. So like it doesn't even feel like weird gigging with them and stuff. And like plus I also kind of got like almost grandfathered into like that crew, because like Sean, the old guitar player for Groaning Retch, is like really, really good friends with that whole crew, and he's a bit younger than I am. So like it was kind of a natural like progression of like getting to know them and gigging out with them like quite a decent amount and stuff. But it is really cool to see like kids just absolutely exploding and like playing at levels that most people are like pretty blown away by. Because if it was like punk or something, and once again, this like no shade at punk or anything along those lines, but some things are a little bit more accessible from a playing standpoint. And then like when you see kids like playing like technical death metal and brutal death metal stuff when they're like not even out of high school yet, like it's pretty impressive. And I mean, it's probably also a little a little bit different from like what, and I don't know how old you are, so I apologize if I'm grouping you into
No
like
worries.
my somewhat old man category of this, but like assuming that you're in my like same general age range, like even in high school, like we didn't have the access to the music that a lot of these kids do. Like you couldn't just look up like some obscure band on Spotify and whatever. Like all of my initial artists, and I've had this conversation with like one of my close friends like quite a decent amount recently because he's like about 10 years younger than me. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I've been into this since I was like 16. I'm like, dude, they didn't have that at FYE when I was 16, so I didn't find out about it until I was 26. Like it's not because I wasn't looking for it, it's just like those bands
don't have the same tools.
they did, yeah, they didn't play shows like around very often, or I didn't see flyers for them when I was in high school. And then also like their CDs weren't available. Like I wasn't ordering CDs from Japan off of eBay or like Indonesia off of eBay when I was like 16 years old. Like the internet was kind of almost in its infancy, and like nobody was looking up that stuff on YouTube or had access to it. So it's like part of it is probably the fact that like they have the tools that have allowed them to get there much faster. But also, that being said, like I think even if I was brought up with the same tools and stuff, like I wouldn't be playing at that level. There isn't an innate thing for a lot of the people that I mentioned that I wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise. But they definitely have a lot more tools at their disposal than like we ever had. And actually, this probably goes for you in terms of photography too. Like I know you're fairly new, all things considered, but like if you had started this when you were in high school, you'd have to like wait for your friend to get good and then like piggyback off of learning off of them. Like you couldn't be like, oh, well, hey, like, what do I do for these settings for my DSLR to like get up to speed on this? You couldn't just look up a how to on that. Like, you had to like really find the right people or be fostered into it or whatever. Like now you could just.
And that was Maddie for me. Maddie was my person of what settings do I use, and I see that.
But even still. Yeah, and even if you didn't have Maddie, like now, theoretically, you could just look up how-tos and like, yeah, it might take you a little bit longer and you might not have like the connections that you got through her or like met the people that you did, but at least your skills of whatever, like you could just like you could move at an exponential rate in comparison to 10 years ago. Like there's no barrier to entry on any of these things. If you want to learn it, you can learn it. You just have to put in the time.
Yeah, I just saw, and I see it a lot working in schools and everything, but as you're saying, the technology that like they have, like I'm in elementary schools and classrooms have MacBooks, like for every single student, like everything.
Yeah.
And then I just saw my high school has like a daily news and media club and everything with like full gear and stuff. And it's like, wow, I had
you
that
can learn all that stuff by the time you're 17. Yeah. And like, exactly. And also at that point in time, like you're not a burnt out adult, like trying to like take in what little bit of brain space like you have left in order to do it. Like you're a sponge as a kid, like your ability to learn at that point in time, like you never get that like time and like brain power back. So yeah. I don't know. It's pretty wild, the difference. And I'm sure that the people from like the 80s and 90s in comparison to like what we had growing up probably feel the same way, where they're like, oh, well, these kids had it so much easier. It's like, yeah, we had a lot more tools than you did. And now these kids 10 years after us, 15 years after us have way more tools than we ever had. So it's just a natural progression of things.
Yeah, I'm in a media group, and there's this 18-year-old, weirdly enough, from Poughkeepsie. I saw an 845 number.
Oh, nice.
I was just like, I need to know where you're from.
Yeah,
he's 18 and has already like done photo shoots, so like for some insane rappers, and like the connections that he has at just the age of 18, like the technology that he has at his age already, and everything, like. It's the exact thought of like, if I did it at that time, would I have turned out differently, or would I still be right here?
Yeah.
It's definitely crazy, because I clearly remember like we kind of alluded, or at least I alluded to this when we had the first episode of the podcast. It's like, I mean, I grew up listening to what my mom played, right? And it was like, okay, cool. And I didn't know what was really far outside of that, like I listened to this, and then I remember going into a music store up here. It's called Bull Moose. It's in like Maine, New Hampshire.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I've been to one before. I go up to
okay.
Portland a decent amount, so I've been up.
Yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah. So
been to
like
one before.
I remember the first time going in there when I was super young with my sister. My mom was going somewhere and there was like a CD store, and I was like kind of starting to like dive into different types of music, and I was like, "Oh, a CD store." And like it's like I started to go in there, and I remember looking in there, and like at the time where that specific Bull Moose was, it was super grungy, and there was just a
Mm.
bunch of guys like all in black, right? And it's obviously like metal hardcore kids, but like at the time I didn't know that, and I was like, I clearly remember like it's me and my sister, and my sister's super young, and I clearly remember grabbing her hand, turning around, and just being like running back to my mom and being like, yeah, this is not a place for us to go. This is
Yeah,
not where
yeah, yeah.
we don't listen to this kind of music, like, but
Yeah.
it's just crazy like how people, especially in this day and age, and even within the last like 10 years, have had so much more access to like, and especially with YouTube and Spotify and all these different things, like these different platforms. It's crazy to kind of see the amount, and like you said, like those kids are incredibly good at a specific type of music that like they've had a lot more access to, more than we did when we were that age.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like they have the opportunity to be able to learn that, play, and just hone their craft very quickly because
And
they have access to it.
yeah, and like not for nothing. And once again, like none of this is discounting. Like I'm very happy that those kids like do have that access. Like I think it's really rad and they're utilizing it the way that they should be utilizing it, which is really cool. But I think the other thing is like from the social aspect also shouldn't be like understated with that too, because like they can get like not to beat a dead horse with talking about Wretch Inferno. It's just like the one kind of just most top of mind, and we played a lot of shows with them. But like they have connections with like I don't know, like Maggot Stomp, like death metal bands that like of people that are been in the scene for probably like about the amount of time that I have, but are in like successful death metal bands. Like they got Frozen Soul specifically asked for them to open up like one of the shows that they played in either Massachusetts or New Hampshire or something like
Middle
that.
East, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like so they got asked to play for that show, like because like first of all, they showed that they're worth having on because they kick ass. And then also like they've made the connections with people, I think probably in person first, but have then like fostered it then on like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or like wherever the hell it is. I don't know specifically, but like I've seen stuff before with like the guitar player for like Frozen Soul, like commenting on Wretched Inferno stuff, being like, yo, sick job, guys, whatever. Like, that's rad because like you could be as talented as anything. But like, first of all, if you're cocky, no one's going to give you the time of day or like you'll probably get shot down. But like they've understood not only how to do these things musically and excel at them, but also like how to like play the game and like really utilize like the social aspects to their benefit too. And like I think that it will be like it's just another strength in their like bag of tricks of things that they like really excel at. And like the marketing and social aspects are like probably almost more important at this time than like what the actual musical content is and like how
Yeah.
you present yourself. Cause like, just for example, like with Groaning Retch, and once again, this is like no shot at Groaning Retch by any means, but like they've heavily marketed themselves as like being a death metal band, which in like the Maggot Stomp, like I guess like subgenre of like death metal bands that's out, like they do really well. But then when you get people that like I don't really have this because I am too old to care at this point in time, but like if you get people that are maybe 10 years younger than me that are big into like a lot of the bands that I'm into, they like turn their nose up at it and be like, oh, that's not death metal, that's like basically crossover hardcore into death metal. And then that almost looks worse than if they were just like a hardcore band.
Right.
And most of Groaning Retch's shows have been on like basically hardcore lineups and stuff like that, or not really deathcore lineups that much, but like every once in a
Oh,
while.
hardcore. Weirdly enough, I just had the flyer from this time last year. It was Groaning Retch, Last Laugh, Watch Your Back. It was a hardcore show with Groaning Retch.
Yeah. But like then we get like the people that are like hardcore, or sorry, like death metal elitists that are like, oh, like this band like sucks because like they have two-step pieces and whatever. It's like, first of all, those people are absolutely obnoxious. Like, I think it is, because it's like, really, what are you getting out of doing that? And that's not even me going to bat for Groaning Retch. I just think it's like obnoxious across the board. Like the people who are like too into like genre, like blinders or however you want to call it, like, just have fun. Like you're taking away from like what makes the music thing fun. But I guess my entire point for saying that is like, if we had potentially labeled ourselves something closer to like a maybe an Iron Gate or something like that in terms of what we said we were doing, then like we might be popping off in an entirely different area, or we might be drowning in an entirely different area. Like I just think that like how you brand yourself and stuff like that makes a huge difference, like almost more than like what your music is and stuff like that. But like there's way too many like stones placed into those baskets. I think personally, like just have fun. Like if you're not having fun, then like don't do it. So
I would definitely agree with that. There's some times where we've been on shows that for me it's been like, especially up in Maine and New Hampshire, I mean, like the hardcore bands are really where it's at right now, right? Like that's where you get a lot of the people going to shows. It's just hard. It's a hardcore, straight hardcore shows. You know what I mean? And so, those shows really pop off. Usually they're fully packed, if not sold out.
Yeah.
And it's like we don't, we at least we as in Death's Hand, we have some parts that kind of are all over the place. We have some hardcore parts, we have some two-steppy parts, we've got a lot of synth stuff and the new stuff. We have some death metal stuff, we have some metalcore stuff. I mean, it's kind of all over the place a little bit, and kind of on purpose. But like we have a tough time, like, I don't want to say fitting into shows, but there's a lot of shows where we'll go and play, and it's just like, a lot of the people, if it's not hardcore, they're not going to move forward.
Care. Yeah, and even more so than that, like if you're not, and I'm not saying this for you guys, I'm just saying like as an application across the board, even if you are in that genre and like you're not like in the cool group, depending on what it is, like I know Hudson Valley, like specifically, there's almost 2 hardcore scenes for the hardcore scene, and it's kind of like the cool kids that I don't know. Anyway, it's like the cool kids group, and then there's like the outcast group, but like realistically, they're not that far apart from each other in terms of what they're doing. It's just like a social like barrier for whatever reason. But like the thing that's so stupid about it is like if they merge the two, like the Hudson Valley scene is already huge for the entire country, and I'm not saying that as being like already having that notion because I grew up there. Like you hear it on all of the podcasts, like all the time. They talk about it on Hard Lore, and I don't even listen to Hard Lore, but like they talk about it all the time. And like if they did that, it would be like an absolute powerhouse. But you have like 20 bands in like the big group of things, and then like 30 bands in the outcast group of things, and it would just be like this massive thing. And also like there would be more unity into it. So like it's kind of stupid how that works. But basically just piggybacking off your point and saying like you feel like, oh, you might not fit in on the shows, but like even if you guys had, I don't know, 5 other bands that like you maybe felt more comfortable with, like 3 of those may just like have their nose turned up at you anyway. Like you can never, you can't control anything outside of immediately what you're doing. The best you can do is the best you can do. And hopefully people like it. And if you're a nice enough person, then like, hopefully it takes you far enough, or because you kind of either have to be super nice or like kind of exactly the opposite of that and be like almost notorious. I feel like there's kind of 2 lanes there, but I would prefer to be the nicer one out of those 2 any day of the week. I feel like it might not get you as far, but at least you can feel comfortable with that you've gotten to where you've gotten to, like based on actual credit, as opposed to like kissing the right people's asses and then like riding those coattails. Like I don't know. For me, I'd rather have like actual friends and enjoy what I'm doing than like be trying to um, pose to people that don't want to be around me, like, and with
Yeah.
hopes that like one day they'll flip their switch and be like, oh, you're cool enough for us now. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, I'm too old for that. I can't be bothered with it at this point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and I mean, like for us, I mean, like it's funny because we have a lot of our friends are in the hardcore scene. Like we play a lot of shows with some of those hardcore bands that like are good friends with us. Like we're good friends with them. It's just it's interesting that, like I said, like the movement isn't there necessarily. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that's the only really way I can put it because other than that, like it's fine.
Mm,
Um, it's just it's one of those things where, and you kind of nailed it on the head. Um, we just at this point we just do what we want to do. We sound like we want to sound. We do what
yeah.
we want to do. We play what we want to play. We play the shows we want to play, and we just try to have fun. Try to
Yeah.
have fun, meet new people, play with new bands. We pretty much do whatever we can in order to have the best time that we possibly can. And it's just
Yeah.
like, and even the bands that like, I mean, there's a band up here, Gumscab, that's doing like,
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I
yeah,
know. Scab. Yep.
they're doing crazy things. I mean, they're homies, like they're friends with us. We're very close friends, but it's crazy to see like we've played shows for that with them where like everyone's going absolutely batshit crazy for them,
Mm,
and then like not just us but other bands too, where it's like us, it's like
dead.
minimal movement,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not and again, I'm not complaining. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's interesting to see that it's like, well, these guys are straight this, so
Yeah.
we're moving for them because they're exactly what's I don't want to say what's in, but like
Yeah.
what's popular right now. You
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
and the other thing not to be discounted with that also is like you don't know just because they're your friends, like you don't know who their friends are. Like if their
Right.
friends are all like hardcore scene heads and whatever, like that's who's gonna mosh for them. Like if you're there and let's say like your crew, like aside from them, but I mean like people coming to see the show, like aren't there because it's not as much what they're into, then like naturally you're kind of gonna get that disparity.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's definitely weird because like we play with this band Tar a lot for Groaning Retch, and I think Tar runs into like the same issues that we do, where like our friends that we play a lot with, who are like strict death metal bands, like get a lot of love, and then like we play and people are like, oh, like this isn't really it, because a lot of the younger kids who are like into the death metal are like, oh, I'm only into death metal and whatever. And like, I can't even like turn up my nose at that because I was
Right.
kind of like that at that age too.
Yeah.
And whatnot. Although obviously like the landscape was really different at that point in time, but
Yeah.
like, you just never know who's there. Like if you're in a death metal show and like you're a crossover death metal band, like you might get some hate. And if you're in a hardcore show, you
Right.
also might get some hate. But then when you find the sweet spot, then you end up like really excelling. So kind of what we
Yeah.
were saying before with like the gigs, and like it's kind of a gamble. Like it's a never ending fucking gamble. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
never know. Even like you could have friends there and like maybe they're not feeling so hot that night, and then the movement is just like it sucks. Like you can't really predict. I consider playing shows like a roulette table. Like
Yeah.
you just don't ever fucking know like what you're gonna get, and that's part of the reason that I hate it. Like I it's just never been like, I like going to watch, and like I don't really enjoy playing live because I just don't really think it's never been an area I've excelled. I don't live in the moment in pretty much any aspect of my life, which is deeply problematic. But like all kidding aside, it definitely hinders me from a live show standpoint, where like some people feed off the energy and like can really get into it, and like I'm just in my head the entire time of like, oh, like did I fuck this up? Like does everyone hate this? Does anyone like this? Like whatever, unless it's like really apparent, and it kind of almost like takes away the fun for me. So like I just have recognized at this point in time that like it just doesn't really serve me anymore.
Yeah.
And like all of the traveling and all the money to go towards it and like the whole deal just like isn't really worth my time. And like I'm really stoked that when people do love it, and like I hope nothing more for like everyone that does really enjoy it, that they get the responses of the shows that they want and stuff like that. But for me, it's just I don't know. I don't really particularly like that gamble because like you never know what that can of worms is going to be, and it's just like I don't know. I don't really want to have like a shitty day for 2 days afterwards being like, damn, we played a pretty good set, but nobody fucked with it. So like, what am I doing with my life? So
Right. Minds and yours,
yeah. So
yeah,
anyway.
I definitely get that. That's funny. Well, so you touched on this a little bit, but if you weren't writing just death metal stuff, what other genre would you want to play? I know you kind of answered that a little bit, but like if you took that outside of both of those, like if there was something that was like, you know, intrigues you, but you really haven't played yet, you know, like
okay. Well,
you know what I mean?
that probably that nuance changes things drastically, because I would say that if I was just going to choose something else, it'd probably be something I've already dabbled in already. But if it's something that I haven't done before, would really love to do like an Alice in Chains like type Brit band, because Alice in Chains I've been getting back into big recently, and I like never really messed with much grunge in terms of writing. It's like one of the few things when bridging into heavier stuff that I think I've never really like tried my hand at. So I think that would be cool, but like and this is not to be like, oh yeah, I've done like a whole lot of things, because like a lot of it's been absolute dog shit, but I've written so much music over the years and tried to emulate so many things that like at this point in time, like I have a lot of things that I would like to get back to doing that I've just like put on hold, that I've like of like other subgenres or other genres that I like, but one that I've never done before is grunge, and I think that would be like kind of cool to mess with, and I just love Alice in Chains. So
yeah, that would be fun. I think one of the genres that I would love. I'm a drummer at heart. I've been playing drums my whole life. Drums is like my main instrument. I mean, lately, as of playing in bands again, I've been playing guitar. But I've always really wanted to be in a ska band, like really, really badly. Like
that's so funny given like the upbringing that you had. Although I guess Motown, like with all the horns and stuff, I guess it's not really that far off. But like from a high level, that seems like such a wild jump, because that like is not huge in your upbringing, and then like not huge in your current like things that you're working on. So that is really strange, but it does seem like really fun. So I completely understand that too.
Yeah, I mean, like the first jump outside of like listening to, and I will admit this, like this, I pretty much listened strictly to like Motown music, and then like then we started listening to like radio stuff. So I started listening to like Backstreet Boys. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like literally, like it was
first concert I ever went to. I was like 5 years old. I saw Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, so, it was like it was all singing stuff, because my mom's
that's cool.
Singer, so it was all singing stuff, all stuff that had like a lot of like, you know, melody and a lot of harmony and all that stuff. Just was singing wise. So that's where I grew up. And then my first jump like into stuff that wasn't that was punk, and it was actually MXPX was the first band.
Okay.
That
I saw them. That was like the first show that I went to as a teenager, because like I'd been to a lot of shows when I was like younger, just because of like my sister and whatever. So I went to a lot of things before I was like 10 years old. But the first show that I ever went to see was like Good Charlotte, Something Corporate, MXPX, and I don't know. I think I was like 12 or 13. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah. So it was like for me, like the first initial thing was punk music. Like I talked about this on the last podcast. It was like Mustard Plug, MXPX. Like No Effects, like a lot of those like bands within that genre, like is kind
Yes,
of
the
what
Tony Hawk
Tony
soundtrack
Hawk soundtrack.
playlist.
Yeah, yeah, literally. Like before I'd play the game, pretty much. But
Yeah.
it's pretty much where I got that, and so it was like then like I figured out what ska was and like listened to Catch 22, Real Big Fish, like a bunch of ska music, and it's been one of those things where it's like there's a lot of different uh uh influences that kind of go into that. So like there's like a lot of punk and just there's I don't know. There's just so many things in there drum wise that excites me. It's like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? There's just like endless amounts of things I can do within that, and it's
And
just
that's
like
kind of crazy because I don't think I've ever noticed, and not that it's a genre that I listen to very often,
right.
but now tomorrow is going to be spent like basically delving into all of that because
You
it's
should,
not something that I've
you
ever
should,
noticed for drums or anything like that.
yeah,
And I'm a complete and total nerd when it is like that because I'll sit there and like dissect everything.
yeah,
Like it's crazy that for some of my favorite albums, I feel like such a poser. I'm like one of those name 3 songs type of like people because I can probably tell you that like I have probably of my top 10 albums of all time, I can probably not name more than 4 songs in the entire album, but I can tell you like every drum fill, every riff transition, like everything. And because like that's just all I care about and
yeah.
whatever. And I'll dissect the shit out of everything, which is part of the reason that I'm like writing all genres all the time just to like see if I can replicate it. So now I'm going to spend all tomorrow listening
You
to
should,
Scott for
you
just
should,
the drums.
you seriously should. Well, like I'm similar in that way. Like if you were to be like, oh, like name 5 Alpha Wolf songs, I can probably name you one.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I
it's
don't
pretty
I
insane.
I don't I I don't look at song names.
I
Like
just don't remember. I don't remember any of them, and I think part of the thing is for me, and like this actually kind of goes back to similar to what we were talking about in terms of like if guitars speak to you and like the stupid reference that I made about like the internal dialogue. But one thing that I have been noticing a lot recently, because I have been talking to people about it, which probably sounds really strange, is like I think there's a dichotomy of people that where like vocals and lyrics um, like don't matter in so much that like people take the vocals as like another instrument so they don't ever really like get any of the lyrics and like don't even really know what's being said, and then those are the people that are like just trying to fumble through lyrics for like songs that they've heard a million times, and like they're just basically faking it and it's just like sounds because they don't actually know what's being said. And like I'm kind of one of those people.
mhm.
And then you have the people that like know lyrics to literally everything. Like my wife has heard a song for 30 seconds and already knows like every bit of lyrics that are in it. And she can tell
That's
you
okay.
songs that she heard 15 years ago, like lyrics to it. And it's absolutely bonkers. But like the reason that I even bring that up is because I think for people that view vocals more as the um, I guess like situation where it's like an instrument, they tend to not know like song names and things like that because like it's kind of irrelevant. Like if
Mhm.
in so much that like you don't know lyrics, like you know the melodies, you know everything that goes along with the melodies, but like you don't know what the words are, you don't know what's being said, and it kind of doesn't really matter. So therefore, you also don't know song names because you don't have anything to hook it to.
Correct.
So it is really, really weird how there seems to be that split of people, and once again, not really much in the middle. It's like you're one of them or you're the other. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I don't.
feel like I'm actually kind of in the middle because I
oh,
do
okay,
learn
all right,
lyrics. I know, but I'll hear a riff like in the beginning of a
Mhm.
song, like not the car I've been using doesn't have like screen, so I can't see it. And
Yeah.
then I'll hear the riff and I'll remember what the lyrics are and I'll remember most of the song, and then of course it'll get down to the point of remembering like the song name, but like everything
Okay.
else.
All right, fair enough. I just like I guess I was more so talking about like just the lyrics, but I think a lot of the song name things tend to go hand in hand with if you are in the I guess former category of that where like you don't really know the lyrics and you just view like vocals as
Yeah,
another instrument,
exactly.
then you're much less likely to remember like what the song name is or like any of the songs on the album, because like those aren't your focal point. Like, you know, if the song name was like the melody piece of like the song, then you might remember it, but like obviously that's not going to be the case. So I don't know, but it is really weird how people drastically like differently interpret those things, and kind of how the impact that they leave on you, or the lack of impact that they leave on you, is very, very bizarre.
Yeah.
No, but musicians that can listen to a song and like have it basically down, like the opposite of the vocal, like lyrics things, like they can just listen to it and they have it, like insanity.
Yeah, that's very crazy.
Yeah, that's how I am. I'm definitely like, lyrics mean nothing to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't want to say that they mean nothing, because there are certain situations where I feel like I do know them and I do relate heavily, and those ones do really pull at my heartstrings. But I would say for the amount of music that I consume in comparison to lyrics that I know / and or care about is like probably less than 5% of what I'm listening to on a regular basis. Like, I love Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie's probably one of my favorite artists of all time, and it's like, how many memes are there about Rob Zombie lyrics just being like Scooby-Doo character names strung together by like weed smoking like words and whatever. It's like, it's nonsense, but it's so sick.
Yeah.
Blink-182 is just random words put into songs. You can't make me think differently.
I will say, that's true. I mean, there are songs that, you know, lyrical parts mean something to me. That is true. I can't say none for sure.
I don't think anyone lives in a vacuum, but I'm just saying, like, by and large, like, you kind of
same
like one or the other, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at vocals, especially in metal, like, for me, the songs that are the most interesting to me are the ones that where the vocal patterns and the tonality of the vocals match very well with what's going on with the rest of the music.
And that's exactly like kind of what I was getting at. And like, I would think, I actually, there's probably been studies done by this, and I should probably look this up, but I bet it probably like has a lot to do with what you listen to in your formative years. Because like, when you're talking about Motown, and granted, I apologize if I'm stepping out of line because it's not a genre that I know a ton, but I would say if you talk to most people that listen to like a lot of Motown growing up, like my mom being one of them, and I've never asked her about this, although I know my mom doesn't know lyrics to anything, so maybe this kind of does work. But like, I think like Motown is like very melody driven heavy, but not necessarily like, if you look at the lyrics to some of the stuff, you're like, oh, this is kind of underwhelming in comparison to like what's going on vocally. So it might just be, and then I guess same thing goes for me with like death metal stuff, where it's like, I don't care about any of the lyrics to Cannibal Corpse songs, because it's just like horror stuff that like nobody cares about. And like, I'm saying that as somebody who cares, but like nobody really cares about it. So like, and with that being said, like all the death metal stuff, it's kind of like all content that I don't care to know the lyrics enough about. And also the fact that it's set in a context where like you already really have to be listening in order to intake it. So I think that like, maybe if you're listening to things in your formative years that like aren't pop or whatever, where like the lyrics are like the big thing, or like probably hardcore, because like you think about people, like everyone has a have heart tattoo with like have heart lyrics or like something like that or whatever, and it's like, so that's big to them. So those are probably people that like, that was the focus, and you probably don't find them having conversations like we're having right now and being like, oh, I don't really pay attention to that. But like, if you look at the lyrics to like Brandy or like something that was like Motown from like back, it's like, okay, like this is not really that great, but like Brandy kicks ass. Like, it's a rad song, but like I don't care about Sailor Towns. Like, nobody cares about Sailor Towns.
Right.
So I think that probably like bears a pretty big impact into like how you developed, or like how you develop like your understanding, and like if that really plays an instrumental part in like how you interpret music.
For sure. And I mean, especially with songs like that that have like, specifically in that genre, I would say like R&B, soul, Motown, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a lot of that, I would say lyrics are important to a point, but it's more the
But not
melody
as
because,
much. Yeah.
yeah, it's more the melody because when you listen to it, the whole point of that is for you to listen to it and then kind of, how do I explain it? Um, they specifically want to hook you on specific lyrics or specific parts or like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hook,
of
the
course,
hook
of
of a
course.
song, the chorus of a song, like kind of how you were talking about, with Cannibal Corpse, like they have specific parts that try to
Yeah,
bring
yeah.
people in. Yeah, that was kind of the point, right? It's the lyrics I would say are probably second. It's
1,000%. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's you've got your band that's playing in the background, that's very talented, but playing something that's kind of like in the background where that
The
melody can be
vocals
pushed
are
forward.
vocal melody is the primary focus of
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, and so that's why like I think I'm really into ska. I think I'm really into punk. I think I'm really into, that kind of stuff because
Yeah.
the melodies and stuff in there, it's the same thing. Like a really good horn section, I'm
It's
like,
gonna trump everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that's awesome. And it's the same but it's also the same thing I would say with metal music. Like
Yeah.
I specifically, not that there's like, crazy melodies. There are in some, but
I mean,
like
for
in like
metalcore, there's like is pretty like melody heavy in comparison
exactly.
to a lot of other subgenres per se.
Exactly. And it's like as long as you have something that can hook somebody in, and Death's Hand does this. I mean, when we have choruses in our songs,
Mm.
we have specific choruses in our songs, and a lot of it is it tends to be chord heavy, not necessarily riff heavy. Sometimes it is, but it's our two big songs that we have right now, Lacerations, which is off our old EP, and then Run From It, which is off our new EP. Both of those choruses have like chord parts. You know what I
Yeah, yeah.
mean? And it's very specific. The chord parts are very easy so that the rhythm of the vocals is
It's
what
not a
kind of
breakdown.
catches you and pulls you in. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, man, this is really cool to kind of tie all this in. It's kind of like blowing my mind a little bit, but
So
um
one of those things that not a lot of people ever think about, but I'm
yeah,
a huge dork. It's what I
yeah,
spend the majority of my time thinking about. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
I love this. Awesome. So we talked about Infinite Misery, how working on music and everything. So what's new, even though you're leaving, what's new for Groaning Retch? If
I actually don't really know. I think what they would tell you and what I would tell you might be two different things. I don't think that there's like been a ton of new stuff yet, just because like the split with Tar just got done, and they're probably also like needing to spend some time getting like new people up to speed and stuff like that. So I don't think a ton, but Mike keeps on saying that they're working on a full length, but I don't know if there's that many songs in the works yet that they could be saying that they're working on a full length, but maybe it's just like stuff that I don't really know, because I haven't really asked about it, because like it's not that I don't want it's not that I don't want to know. It's just like I
it
don't
doesn't
want
pertain
to.
to you.
Not even so much that, I just don't want to get like roped into more time than I like want to be. And once again, it's like no shot against them. It's just, if Groaning Retch was purely going to like become back to like an internet band again and like not be playing live shows, I think my position may be very different than I'm in now. But it's like my wife is finishing up with school, which she has been doing for the past year. So like we pretty much haven't seen each other like hardly at all between her work schedule and everything. Like I think Norway was the first time we've spent more than 36 hours together in a year. So that's now that she's like done with that, like I don't want to be, oh, sorry, I'm up in Boston, I'm up in New Hampshire, like whatever, because Groaning Wretch's position is also probably particularly unique for a non-touring band, in so much that the members were so all over the place that the shows that we get offered are pretty
Yeah.
all over the place. because like everyone initially was up towards like Northern Mass, so they get New Hampshire shows, they get Mass shows, like every once in a while a Connecticut show and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, I don't want to drive 5 hours like to play to 30 kids. Like, and I mean, not that all the shows are dead, because like some of them are really popping off and some of them are really fun. But once again, like you don't ever know what you're getting. It's just like, dude, I don't want to drive 7 hours round trip to play to 15, 20 kids, like because the promoter like didn't do a good job, or we don't have people that we know out there, or like whatever the situation may be. So like I just don't really want to take the time to do that. And also like I really love hiking. In the past 2 years since I've been doing the band, I feel like I can count the amount of hikes that I went on other than like being away on probably like a hand and a half, which is not a whole lot for what I'm used to doing. So like just things that I like have wanted to be doing. And also I have like so many projects that I have started and albums that I've started that I like want to try to get done. And I like can't really do that when I'm going to shows, because I'm also doing this other band that I started a few years ago called wow, I can't even talk about my own band. Sinner Stable, which is like, I guess like a thrash hardcore crossover band, like I guess like kind of close to like Power Trip and Enforce and stuff like that. And like I had an entire release done for the past 3 years or 2.5 years or whatever it is, and it's just been sitting unfinished for vocals just because like I haven't had the time amongst gigs and stuff. So I literally just finished that up like 2 weeks ago or something like that. So I have like 2 releases coming out in the fall, and it's just like, okay, like not both of those were necessarily ready beforehand, but it's like I wouldn't have had the time to do other musical things that I wanted to if I'm playing whatever number of shows and stuff like that. It's just like I have so little time with I mean, everyone is pretty much in this boat, but like I have so little time for my hobbies outside of work that like I kind of need to trim the fat for things that are like not really it. And because I don't enjoy playing live so much, like I just can't devote the time to being in something. And like obviously Groaning Retch isn't big enough where I could pull like a Will Putney and Fit for an Autopsy, where I'm like just sitting at home writing and I don't have to play any of the shows. Like maybe Mike would be down for that if I pitched it, because like I did have a bunch of material for Groaning Retch like written that like could have been used that might not probably ever see the light of day. So I don't know, like maybe that'll be like on the table later on, but I also feel weird like controlling things if I'm like not really doing stuff with them. So I don't know. It's just like it's a weird thing. So yeah, I'm just trying to use this time to like focus on doing some other stuff outside of what I was doing before, and try to hopefully finish up some of the synth pop stuff that I've been working on for a few years that I just haven't gotten a chance to do, and like just like extraneous things. And like I want to cook through at least a few of the releases that are like probably 80% done, and I just like haven't had the brain power or the time to finish up. So I'm gonna hopefully use the next like 6 to 12 months to wrap all those up, because I have so many things started that are so close to being done, and I just like haven't had the chance to get done. So yeah.
I mean, I think it sounds like it'll be really good for you to just, you know what I mean? Like do exactly what you need to do to get it done.
Tie up loose ends.
Yep. Get it all done. Put the bows on everything.
Yeah.
No, but that is the thing. We don't have that much time. That's just putting the things that you care about first, because I used to cover every show I could, and now I'm doing the handful that I care about and like can move me and such, because it's not worth your time.
And I'm sure this is very relevant to both of you guys as well, although I feel like I am somewhat in the position here where like I can do this and I'm not consciously aiming to do so, but it kind of just goes along with it. Like when you're making those connections, or like you have those ties to like either friends or whatever, like you feel obligated to like be at their shows and whatever and all these things. And like part of dropping live stuff from Groaning Retch is like I feel like I don't have to be at like every single show that my friends are playing, because like I don't feel as obligated, because like we're not gigging with them constantly, and I'm not like seeing them all the time and stuff like that. And I don't mean to say that as in being like unsupportive, but like I don't need to be at like the 3 shows that you're playing in Connecticut in this month, or like the 3 shows that you're playing in Massachusetts this month. Like I can go to 1 every 2 months or something like that and still like be a good friend and like whatever. Whereas like when I was playing shows alongside those people before, like I would feel like I had to be at a show 3 hours away from me on a Thursday night. And like, dude, I'm so burnt from playing shows and just life and stuff like that, that I just like, I can't do it. So it's like not only not playing Groaning Retch live shows, but also like trimming down the amount of shows that I've been going to, period. Cause like since COVID came back, I've probably been hitting between like 50 and 70 shows a year. Like no exaggeration, like it's at least 1 a week. And if I'm not hitting one week, then it's supplemented by 2 or 3, like another. So it's got to be sitting in that range. And like, I'm trying to get that down to like 20 a year. And like, it's just, I very much enjoyed the shows, all the shows that I got the chance to see. And I'm very fortunate of all the like live music that I've gotten a chance to see, but like, it's just not a sustainable amount for me personally, where I just like need to roll it back a little bit. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's what we've got, right?
Sweet.
Yeah. That's a wrap on all the questions we have. But yeah, it's been an awesome time talking to you, man. Really
Likewise.
appreciate you taking the time to kind of just run through what you've got going on. It's like I said in the beginning, it's cool to meet new people, learn, new stuff, listen to new bands that I personally haven't heard before, and kind of exciting to see some of the new stuff that you have coming out. That'll be really fun. We'll definitely be following those releases, hopefully soonish.
Hopefully
you wrap them up.
Yeah. Well, I know that I don't need to explain to you, because I know I heard you on the first episode saying that like you had stuff done for like either 6 months or a year before you put it out. It's just like getting those like last pushes that sometimes are the most painful. So I know you guys both can relate to that, and just like tying up those loose ends sometimes is very you're like there across the finish line, but just not there yet. So
yeah,
but
exactly.
thank you guys for having me on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have in the next little bit too, since
for sure
are early in your podcast journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should be fun.
Of course. And at this point, we go, if you'd like to catch Rob, his last show with Groaning Retch is this Saturday at Back from the Dead 4 Fest, along with, let me see, Tombstoner, Torn in Half, Sick Bay, Abuse Ritual, Servant of Sorrow, was that Scumbag, we already know Groaning Retch, Faced, and many others. That some of them I need to take the time to read.
Nice. Yeah, and we and I'll also end this too with another show. My band Death's Hand is playing a show this weekend as well. It's October 12th. It's Homie Fest 4. It's Stand Abandoned, When the Dead Won't Die, TFR, Cytokine, Lanterns, my band Death's Hand, Centigore, and some other band that I cannot read at all because I'm cool like that. So
Back from the Dead 4, Homie Fest 4. There's 2 like 4 fests.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's in Lebanon, Maine. So you can check Death's Hand's Instagram for that flyer if you want to take a look and plan on going. But yeah, I guess this wraps up episode 2. It's been a blast, Rob. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of the week and a good show this weekend. And yeah, we'll be back next week possibly.
Absolutely.
With our episode 3. So yeah, guys, I guess that's it for the night. Rob, again, thank you. Ashley, thanks, awesome guys. Time as always. And yeah, we'll catch you guys later.
Sounds good. See ya. Thank you, Rob.
Bye.
Bye.
And restoration